are the two best looking people on the internet. Hi, Penny. How are you?
Where are they? I can't see them.
Well, I don't think they're there yet. People just show up. They'll be like,
I
"Oh shit, that's today."
Yeah, I know. But we are starting earlier than advertised. But we can just have one of our private little conversations for a while until people join in.
That's what will that's
Oh,
it
there
says
you
8
go.
a.m. Oh my gosh, you guys and your timing.
I know,
For once,
Andy.
she told me to be early. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I can't,
Well,
I do not comply in advance. Anyways, Penny, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Brandon. No, I'm good actually. I'm super busy. I'm energized. I'm My progressed Jupiter is just moved into my first house in Leo, conjunct my progressed Mars. So I'm kind of all systems go.
I love it. I love it when you talk like astrology.
When I talk dirty.
Yeah, that's not what I said. I said astrology. You said
Oh,
dirty.
I
I
said
said
that.
astrology. You
Yeah,
see
but
what
I
I
just
did
can't.
there?
I just
Right?
can't help it.
Right. By the way, we do have to be careful with how we're talking because Andy let us know that she's driving the kids to daycare and we shouldn't use flim and flam words. So we
No,
won't. We're pretty good at that, right?
no, we're
Um,
good at that.
yeah, and
And
it's and listen, we've once upon a time we talked about doing like a weekly and a daily show. We wouldn't have even kept up if we were doing a daily show with all the shenanigans, you
I
know?
I don't have the stamina. I couldn't have kept that.
Wow.
I couldn't have kept that up, Brandon.
Well, take my hand. Um, by the way, this is my feigned attempt to becoming Canadian. I'm close enough
Yeah,
to the Canada
I can
border
see
that
it.
I can.
Like a lumberjack.
Oh, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely, and lumberjack was my nickname, on the
It
Indian
was,
Quad for a while. Um, but listen, there's a part of this though that like it just moves so fast, and it moves so whatever, and then we have to kind of like pull out the highlights. Oh no, what's wrong?
no, I'm just agreeing with you because the thing
Oh,
is, everything is so crazy, and the astrology backs up everything that is unfolding. And
hmm,
the thing is, I want to say on a kind of higher frequency level,
yeah,
actually, don't worry. This is going to blow through. It
yeah,
will. It could leave a bit of carnage in its wake. And as always with these kind of unexpected events, what happens is it's always the lower kind of echelon of the people that get hit the worst.
right. And don't you think too? I mean, I've noticed this, and I have a great group of students right now who are just really they're absorbing this, they're connecting the dots, and they're really kind of growing as people, as spiritual, whether they're in the spiritual warrior side of it or if they're in the, I want to, change the world in my own way. Everybody's finding their lane. But one of the things that has been really impressive with this is how much we're really getting our act together on the spiritual side of things. Like it's kind of like we can't overreact. I mean, we were like, oh yeah, these tariffs are going to be a nightmare. Like our texts were just epic. Like we became economists in like 3 messages, right? We
Like
were just
bacteriologists and
you
virologists,
saw you saw my post then. It was like, we're virologists and then we're
expert economists.
constitutional experts and it's like,
Yeah.
listen, here's the thing with this. We're so left to our own devices with so many things. Of course, we've had to become experts in our own life.
Mm.
And that is kind of the muscle that we keep building up, like how to be good at being you, how to be good at being your individual self. And then that, we've acted out on each other. We've acted out in certain ways, and then you realize that you're just wasting your energy. You're
Mm.
not going to convince a Trumper that they don't see, like, how could you back this? Like, how does any of this work? And then they fall back on, well, it's not Biden, or you'll just wait and see, you'll suffer. That's like the vein, and you're like, who
And
wishes
everyone's
suffering on
getting a
people?
bit yippy. I loved his word yesterday. people are getting a bit yippy. People are
Who
getting
said
a bit
this?
the orange one. He said people are getting a
Oh,
bit yippy, like edgy, like nervy. Yeah, Donald.
well, we're getting yippy because you don't really have a plan. I mean,
Mm,
he institutes all of these, things on Wednesday, and by Tuesday he pulls them all because, and then they're like, well, they were negotiating tactics. Well, anybody that knows anything about negotiations, you don't start with a threat. You can start with a strong number, but you don't publicly humiliate people.
yeah.
This is the thing. I've gotten this from you and several other people that I connect with on the regular, doing readings or other business and stuff like that. And the United States really is a laughing stock. Like it really is. It's more of like we're afraid for you, but we're gonna do what's best for us.
Mm,
It's like it's the end of a bad relationship around the world, and they're all taking their ball and going home. And the United States is like, but you want to play with us, right?
mm.
No, we kind of don't. And what's your perspective on that? I mean, what are you seeing in Europe? What are you seeing in the UK? And because I know you're still attached to everything UK, but it's
Mm.
bigger than that. I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I'm not UK based yet, but I will be. Um, I'm just grateful that my piggy bank is in the UK and not
Hmm.
anywhere else, because I think in the UK it's a little bit safer probably than anywhere else. But basically, the rest of Europe, I'm not quite sure what Malta's stance on it is. I haven't read anything, but
Well, they
they
weren't
tend.
on the tariff list. They weren't on the tariff list.
Oh,
They
I'm
were,
just.
yeah, they have existed. They weren't on the change tariff list. They were just on, I think they were mentioned, but nothing changed.
And you mean we are below penguins
I actually thought they were talking
WTF?
about Malta, and they were like, "Oh yeah, they're taxing a penguin island." I started laughing. I go, "Penny Island?" Like that was. I kind of laughed about that. I was kind of like, But I mean, that's just proof positive that he has no clue what he's doing,
No,
and
I
the
mean
people around him have no clue.
Yeah, Europeans collectively are astounded, and personally, people I've spoken to, in the UK, for instance, are just
Yeah.
uh, standing watching in shock as one's pension plan, one's pension pot disintegrate with kind of just regularity. And then, of course, last night he decided to, oh, well, maybe I'll just change a few little things. And so then, of course, whoop, up it goes again. But we're like,
Yep.
not going to get us that way. No, let's just kind of take it easy with this, because the thing is, he's not an economist and he doesn't actually know what he's talking about, personally. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I think I know a little bit more than him.
Well, and it's interesting because it's like, we're put into this very precarious position to be like, what does this mean for me? And I know that people watched their 401ks plummet 20% in 4 days. Like that was gut wrenching. And I mean, think about it when you're like, okay, if I stay the course and if the thing does this, if the thing does that, where it's funny how much your capital gains are taxed. You are really forced to keep it in. Like you can't. It actually supplies a level of anti the volatility like slows down because you can't just pull out your money right away. Like you've really got to plan it.
Yeah,
And that's the only thing keeping that stock market from absolutely tanking because
thank you.
it
Yeah.
was basically like tariffs weren't just tariffs. They were economic killers. It was an economic
Mm,
through fight, right?
mm.
And and then to pull that back 4 days later isn't a plan. Like he's never had a plan. He's never had a plan about anything. And I think that's what should scare everyone.
Mm.
Um, there's no long-term vision. And by the way, coming across the newswire right now, Kash Patel is out as the ATF director.
Can you explain for Europe who Cash
Yeah,
Patel is?
so Kash
I
Patel
know
was
the
put
name, but I'm not sure who
yeah,
he is.
Sure, sure. Kash Patel was put in charge of the FBI, and there are two main divisions of that, and one of them is the ATF, which is basically alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, which is kind of a very antiquated thing. But basically, it's kind of like a drug enforcement, drug trafficking, monitoring, weapons, all that other good stuff. And he's been removed and still in there as the FBI, which, by the way, traditionally you wouldn't have a person cover two different things, two different roles. Kash Patel went and, was watching hockey games last week with Wayne Gretzky and, Gary Bettman, who was the former director of the NHL. And it's like he wasn't doing what he should have been doing. Like you take on a job that big, like that's nose to the grindstone. I'm sorry, you're going to miss a couple of hockey seasons while you're doing the work of the government. Not him; he was high profile to it. And by the way, I mean the funny thing is, too, is he's just acting like Trump. I mean, Donald Trump announced all of these horrific tariffs and then went out and played golf. I mean,
That really, really
yeah,
got me.
did it?
Absolutely.
Did it? Is it because you've known people? Now, hold on a second, Penny. Let's make sure we
Okay.
analyze this the correct way. Is this your British sensibilities being put into play? As in,
It's
like, how can you be this big person, or have you been hurt by a former golfer? Discuss.
No, but I know the golfing community in the UK because my father used to play golf. So,
Yeah.
I was involved in just for the peripheries
Mm,
as a family member. But it was and I mean, I know it's clear now where my allegiances lie, but it was the fact that he trashed and tanked the world economy and then turns around and just says, with his puffed up chest and kind of his ego
yeah.
exuding itself everywhere, right, that's that done. I think I'll go and play golf now. Bye all. And then nobody's asked me whether I won my game. And I wanted to kill him. Oh,
It's
I just
funny. It's
my
funny too
chest.
because yeah, I'm seeing some of the comments here like, "Hey, he does have a plan." See me. I don't disagree with that in a sense. But I think that that's kind of he is never going to reveal his plan. I mean, when you look at what's happened, if you were, and by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene is now being accused of insider trading because of this, because she moved a lot of her stocks into treasury bonds. And people have made the argument that if you move, basically, this type of move would make people move their investments into treasury bonds. So, in other words, you can move your investments, you can't cash out. That's a capital gains. If you move it into something else, then it evens it out. If you push money into treasury bonds, for a safe long haul thing, you also can't take it out. It's almost like it gets trapped into treasury bonds. Well, the treasury bonds actually directly relate to and affect our interest rates. And it also, we have a tremendous amount of debt coming up in the United States because of our national debt, which, by the way, was also kind of because we did things like give people money during COVID, because of things like giving money to Ukraine. And there is a part of this that you're able to now refinance it because those numbers are softer now. If he came out and said that and say, listen, guys, this is what we're doing, it's because we need to reposition ourselves to remortgage some things, and we're going to either get it through tariffs or we're going to get it through this. I would actually say Donald Trump would be a borderline genius, but he's not. He's just wanting to scare people. Like he's getting, without being crude about this, he's getting off on watching the chaos and the pain.
Oh, I
And
agree.
and and don't you feel that similar? Like we've talked about that. Would
Mm,
do you think this is just another blatant move?
I do because it reminds me of the debacle in the Oval Room or the Oval Office when Zelensky was there, because that was just an orchestrated bullying attack. And it was the most awful thing to watch because you could see Zelensky was just trying to sort of follow what was going on and keep up with it and try and say the right thing and, you know, be mindful of being respectful. But he couldn't even breathe or blink without being crucified.
Yeah,
And at the moment, I think it is the sheer arrogance of this US administration that is getting Europe very angry. But Europeans are pretty good at keeping their cool and
yeah,
at just taking a step back because you know, the advice any kind of investment manager is going to give you at the moment is do nothing.
Yeah.
Do nothing, just sit tight and be patient because, and this too shall pass. Because, and I think if we do nothing, that actually irritates him even more because he likes the fact that people have been getting all hot under the collar because he's having an effect. He's getting a reaction. If we
Yeah.
don't react, if we actually remain in a positive state of response and adulthood, because this is not adult behavior. And
He's a hurt child. Like it goes, you know, we've got 10 years of him in the political limelight, let alone in the public limelight, and he's a hurt child, right?
mm, and, you know, I'm just reading some of the chat there, and Annie Jeans is saying, tell us more about the Europeans. Well, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
I would say that, you know, Europe is the parent, actually, because remember, it was the Europeans that decided to boldly go where no man had gone before and ventured off on the Mayflower and ended up in the United States, that you got this soup of energy of different nationalities. And in Europe, I think what we try to do is preserve our individual cultures, have respect for each other's individual cultures.
Right.
And I do feel there is a sense of sovereignty about Europe in general. And so we won't be bullied because when there were comments of 2 or 3 weeks ago about, you know, basically America wouldn't bail Europe out anymore if there was another war, etc. My immediate response as a European and as a British person was, that's okay. Don't worry. We'll manage fine without you. Because
Hmm.
actually, we did up until 1945,
Uh-huh.
because you
Keep
only
going.
came in because of Pearl Harbor, just because you'd had this kind of uh, issue going with Japan. So Japan thought, enough of this, bombed Pearl Harbor, and then America goes, oh, thought of sleeping, did you? Right. Well, we're not going to have any of that, or at least that, that's my view. I don't have to be
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's well, I think you encapsulate it because your upbringing, your sensibilities, you know, all those things kind of lead into it. Makes you an expert in this in your own seat. And you know, here the reason why I joke around about, you know, turning Canadian, you know, it's not that I don't love the United States. I mean, it's the home I've always known, but they did a move with Justin Trudeau resigning and putting in Mark Carney, which sent a very succinct and clear message to the United States and the world. And that is, we're going this isn't about popular votes. This is about making sure that we have people that are highly competent. Mark Carney, if you told me he was going to run the UN and we were going to have one world government, I would vote for Mark Carney for the reason
Absolutely.
that he has an understanding both in economic and socioeconomic, in geopolitical aspects. The guy is a smart cookie. Is he always right? Do I agree with him fully? No. That's what
Mm,
makes him human to me. But that to me is the tone that Europe, Canada is going to be a world leader now.
mm,
Canada is absolutely going to be a world leader, and it's just not for their hockey and their smelt or their
mm.
cod. I,
I
I have
mean,
friends up in New Brunswick that always remind me their cod.
I love the way that Canada is actually standing up and basically not taking any of this. Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
good on you, because we're with you, Canada. That's my feeling, and and how I feel the rest of Europe is feeling about Canada and Greenland and the poor little penguins down in the Antarctic.
Right. And listen, that doesn't mean that Canada has it 100% right. The move of bringing in Mark Carney,
Mm,
and by the way, I thought Justin Trudeau was a little liberal in the loafers, if you want to say it that way. You know, but I didn't think he was a bad politician. I thought he was popular. I think he had a little bit of an Obama effect. And when Carney came in, Carney is also not looking he's trying to hold the line. He's trying to basically say, like, we got to get back to the stuff that we need, right? And I think in the sake of all of the conversation, Canada is really representing Europe and the rest of the world for that matter.
Mm,
China's always going to do their own thing, and then Russia's always going to be, the seedy back end, side of it. Which, by the way, if you meet anyone that has lived in Russia in the last 30 years and came to the United States, every single person has almost the exact same story. They live in fear. They do what they're told. They don't grow their own brain, or the things that they feel rebellious about. They swallow their pride. They get through it because they live in a totalitarian state. They live
mm,
in an autocratic society run by
mm,
oligarchs. There has been all of these elements that are here in the United States that people are trying to shift it to.
mm.
And I don't know. I mean, I think the astrology speaks to it too. I mean, we got the full moon in Libra coming up, right?
Yeah, but can I just ask before we get
Yeah,
on to
sure.
that, what Cosmic BL is meaning by, because I don't know enough about what's happening in Canada, but she's saying that West Canada is threatening to separate if Carney is elected. So there is a large portion then of Canada that is not kind of supporting Carney. Um, as a British person who experienced him as governor of the Bank of England, he was a top man, and
Yeah.
he really ruled a tight ship when he was in charge of the Bank of England. But I'd like to know why there is where the anti-Carney
Yeah.
politics are coming from in that sense.
And listen, there is a part of this that's a little bit like it's enabling that, but listen, we're dealing with, I can't necessarily say that all of Carney's politics are good. I mean, I'm seeing the Western Canada and Alberta and what have you. By the way, Edmonton, get ready. Um, there's also a part of this that you sometimes you've got to kind of do the things that you don't want to do, or get in bed with the people you don't want to get in bed with politically,
Mm,
and deal with them because it's what's best for the long term. And that even though it might be, and I'll tell you where Carney's sins are as I understand them, and I'm in
mm,
no way, shape, or form. His his views on marginalized citizens are very much like he's a bell curve guy. He has that 80%, he's acting for 80% to move them above a line. If you fall below that and you're marginalized, whether it be an LGBTQ thing, whether it be
oh,
a Native American thing, whether it's whatever, he's like, that's not who the policy's for. So there are forgotten people in his
okay,
politics,
okay.
right? So that kind of makes a lot of that as well, right? So
So
yeah, and there's a
Debbie is
lot of things
saying
behind it.
Canada's version of MAGA.
Could be. Could be.
I don't
Yeah, and
know.
I think Alberta is kind of good. I'm glad that Canada is doing what they're doing, and I also love that Alberta is standing up against it too, because that's the way it's supposed to be. We're not all supposed to be in agreement. What we're supposed to be is that we come to the table and we have discussions, and at the end of the day, we say this is what's best for everybody. There is a utilitarian feel to leadership that I think Carney brings to the table, but
Mhm.
I can already tell you that I will be wearing a Bernie Sanders shirt in Alberta, like when I go there. Like that's just a given, because I still want the disestablishmentarianism of not letting it be
Mhm.
too far. And I think is really healthy that we don't all in with anybody ever again. I think that's part of the thing with those two, you
Mm.
know.
Mm. Should we start to look at some of the astrology then?
Yeah, sure. I love your
And
style.
hi, everyone. Do you? And I just want to say hello to everyone, and it's lovely to see you all here.
Yeah, go ahead. Say hello. I'm gonna make sure
And Julia,
we get these
Celine,
up here. Yeah.
Unam, Andy. I saw Jim had joined us, and you're just all awesome. I think it's great you're here, and we'll hopefully have an interesting discussion. Annie, Janice, who else is here? Let's have a look. Cosmic BL, yeah.
Yeah.
Montreal Canadiens are getting a huge Russian star hockey player ahead of his contract. Okay. And
So
hi, hi, see me. Hi. I tell you one thing I just wanted to say to you, Brandon, before we look at this. I was
Sure.
reading something that's going around on Facebook about the fact, and I think we might have talked about this before, but oh, what the heck? Let's just make it public, eh? That actually Mr. Carrot Head was actually recruited by the KGB back in the 80s, and he's
I
actually an
100% agree with that. He has acted like a Russian operative since day one.
right.
He
Okay.
really has. He really, really has. I mean, he has been at a minimum he's compromised. At a minimum, the
So he's
dude was
committing
looking
treason.
at absolute financial ruin in 1988, in 1986. And
So he's
88 and
committing
89 and 90, 91. Like, I mean, he's a train wreck of a human, when
mm,
it comes to business. So of course, why wouldn't they put him in his back pocket, right?
mm. So he's committing treason, and what will happen is Russia, via him, can basically take over control of the American financial and economic system and basically be in charge of the other great big, or one of the big, nuclear nations. How cool is that? What a blinder. Nuclear nations.
When it is revealed how much of a slime ball he is, and by the way, I'm no longer in fear of him coming after me. Remember when we were talking like, don't we have to
Yeah.
worry about this? Don't we have to?
But the
We're
thing is,
pimples on the ass, everybody,
yeah,
right?
when I mentioned him by name on my live about 2 weeks ago, YouTube just cut me off.
Did it really? Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised that like we have had like no technical issues with this, but no,
Uh-huh.
I mean I used to be in fear of this, and I am planning a trip to Canada,
Oh,
and
great.
I am in a position where people are saying to me like, bring a burner phone, don't bring your real phone, don't, and it's good advice because they're like they want to go through your stuff, they want you to self-identify at the border, and if they do a little Google search, they're gonna see that I'm like whatever. Well, I'll put out two like
Mm,
pro Trump things beforehand because they don't do research, they don't do whatever, or if they don't, if they do have it in their back pocket and they're like, oh, you flipped on this, it's like JD Vance going full, N word on him and basically turning around and saying, oh, yeah, but he's a good guy. I think I misunderstood him. Maybe he's not the guy with the little mustache and the comb over. And then you're just like, are you sucking him? Like, what are you doing here? Like,
mm,
what kind of quid pro quo is going on here?
mm,
That you would get into bed with him after being such a hardliner on this. And Ron DeSantis is another one that we've
mm.
really got to kind of watch out for in the flip burger with
Okay.
that. But yeah, let's take a look at the chart because the full
Yes,
moon in
let's.
Libra, there's a couple of really interesting things going on here in this one for me. Like,
Mm.
I always like the ladies first. This, so feel free. I mean, let rip into this.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Well, I think the interesting thing is, apart from the full moon in Libra up there in the actually ninth house, is that the sun is conjunct Chiron and Eris. And Eris, of course, is the goddess who was not invited to the party. And
Mm,
that is not a good position to be in. She gets a little bit angry when she doesn't get invited to join in all the fun. And of course,
mm,
Chiron is exposing all our wounds. And, you know, they are both basically, the sun and the moon are in a T square with Mars in Cancer, still in Cancer, struggling to swim to get back to Leo, where it can be
mm,
in touch with some fire and passion once again. And I mean, the full moon, of course, is, of course, about a relationship and relating. So I wonder whether, in general, I mean, on a personal level, yes, I think it will highlight relationship situations, issues.
yep.
It'll highlight what isn't working, what is wounded, what needs to be healed in relationships. I mean, obviously, often full moons bring conclusions or resolutions, or it could even be commitment, because it can be the the end of a certain way of being together, like the death card in the tarot.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm gonna keep going with that theme, and I'm gonna point out Lilith here because the
yeah,
full moon is gonna transit over Lilith here.
yeah,
You technically have 2.5 days of that full moon cycle, and that's
hmm,
gonna be fully conjunct with that. When the moon and Lilith get together, it's doing deep dive. So that exposure of wounds, and then Eris placement with the sun conjunct to Chiron, and it's a full conjunct to Chiron. Like, I mean,
oh
it's
yeah,
sitting right on top of it.
yeah,
You have these personal wounds, but then you also have this dramatic opportunity for healing. And
mm,
we get hung up on the astrology part of it. It's like, ooh, that's not good. And
mm,
there are moments where we just can't sugarcoat it. But here's the positive out of this: the moon conjuncting to Lilith is an opportunity to really kind of for you to come out and kind of even if you cosplay it, even if you kind of like, well, I'm kind of going to pull out these deepest darkest wounds and I'm going to kind of work with this and role play it so that I can get a better feel for it, or maybe I'm ready to really kind of pull out that kind of level of real healing. um
yeah,
there's real opportunity here for people to recognize that there's healing going on. We're also getting ready for that full opposition of Pluto and
yes,
Mars. I mean,
that's
that's
yes,
firework central, man. Like, we're already starting to feel it.
yeah.
Um, it's oh, that's wonderful. I don't know if you can
I
see
like that
Andy's
ad.
thing.
You ever seen that about
Um,
having self marriage?
well, part of the reason why she's doing that is because the moon is conjunct to Lilith, and you can go within and be your own journey is what's important. And
Yeah,
even if you've been in like two relationships your whole life or 50 relationships since last Wednesday, you're
yeah,
still going to recognize that you have to bring forward the things that you've learned from the last relationship and bring it
mm,
forward to the next one.
mm.
And I think that's incredibly important.
Mm. I
You
think
know,
we've
I,
also got to notice that the moon in this chart is actually conjunct the midheavens. So this is about what's public and what's out there. So there is some kind of balancing and change that I almost want to say balancing the books. And of course, already you could say with the moon walking backwards from his earlier decisions, that maybe by the end of the week, we see more of I mean, we're nearly at the end of the week, of course, more of a balancing so that the markets end in a generally more kind of positive territory tomorrow.
mhm,
Um, and but then, of course, we've got to get through the weekend
yeah.
and not knowing what is going to unfold as the week begins, as the new week begins. But the wounds are
Well,
being exposed, aren't they?
well, they are, but I mean, I think that the 10th house, you're right, kind of has a very public edge, but I don't know anybody that you may have in your personality. There might be certain times for you to share it with it, publicly, whether it be,
Mm,
a client that you work with or
mm,
whatever. But I don't always think that it means that you expose that kind of level of healing. So
no.
I don't want people to think that like, wow, this is very public. Now, in the uber consciousness in the geopolitical world, oh yeah, this will be a little bit of a public wound licking, but
Mm,
personally don't feel like that's going to necessarily be public because there are certain things that have to be in private, but it will affect you publicly. In other words, you may go through this and have like the confidence level because you've healed something, and then you can externalize it, so it might affect your
yeah,
career. It might affect those things, if that makes sense to everybody. you know
yeah, yeah.
that's
Should we put? Oh, sorry. Do you want to say something?
no.
No, I was just going to say, shall we put this full moon with well, actually, with the US chart first, because I think to look at the US natal chart
Yeah.
and the full moon could be quite
Hmm.
telling about what to expect as we go into next.
Susanna just nailed it. She said, don't worry about the weekend, he'll be golfing. um
Yes.
yeah, you've got some cardinal backed up energy here, don't you? The sun is
Mm,
squared. You're also, the sun and the moon square the natal sun. So what does that traditionally mean in astrology?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, yeah. So when the transits are squaring your sun,
Mm, mm,
I mean, isn't that a natural exposure to self? Like this is where that public thing really comes into play. And it moves it. The United States, one of the United States' greatest strengths are having the sun in the seventh house to have great relationships and to empower people with Jupiter and
mm,
to be very principled with Venus. Along comes along
mm. And I
the
think
sun and the moon square.
yes, and what's interesting is that the fourth house, of course, is the homeland. So it's representing the United States. And
Hmm.
where is their natal Chiron? It's actually in the fourth house. So there is always going to be a kind of wound that gets exposed
Yeah.
in America. It's almost like they I can only describe it as my feeling when I've been to America, which is because the history, in a sense, which is colored by Europe, only came into effect from what, the 16, 1700s?
Hmm.
I can't remember when, what's his name
Well,
found.
1776 was the official
Oh,
kickoff,
yes.
but we were
Okay.
kicking around since
So
1605.
So what I'm saying is that as a European visiting America and going to a lot of the historical sites, and please don't all take this personally or as a negative, it's just an observation, but that America as a collective consciousness somehow feels it doesn't have that depth of culture that we have in Europe.
Yeah.
Because in Europe, it goes back thousands of years. And I know America has a different history and depth of culture from the indigenous tribes. That's a
Yeah. And
completely
it's,
different. But
I'll give you a
we,
great example.
mm,
What's that? I'll give you a great example. I mean, the George Washington slept here house is like a big deal. And that happened in 1798.
mm,
Like, and then you carry the one and you're like, oh, it's a couple hundred years old. Like, okay, what else we got? And it's
yeah.
not knocking it. It's just,
No, it's not. It's how it is.
yeah, we don't have a Stonehenge.
No,
We don't have Roman ruins. We don't have those things.
yes,
We do. We just haven't memorialized them the way that everything else is because when we got here, we basically said we are the beginning of time. But if we were good at
mm,
it, we would actually do things like bring up the serpent stone in Ohio and understand
yes,
its
yes,
energy and what it's about and understand that there were ancestors here before us. But that would mean that we would need to lay claim to the fact that maybe we steamrolled and buried history over the years.
yeah.
Wasn't it Turkey? Yeah, I think it was Turkey that they started to dig up um one of the villages and they realized
What,
that there
from
was an entire
underground?
mega city.
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe is definitely one of them, and
Mm.
also right where you are, Gozo. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah, we've
Francis
got
and I had whole conversations about how it was buried.
yeah,
And
we've
they think that actually a portion of the island that you're on is actually on another city, a whole other city of
and
Atlantis.
yeah, and do you know that the Maltese official kind of historian research has only just acknowledged, because it says it's found evidence that prehistory dates back 1,000 years earlier to what they'd originally said,
We go
which
back.
is extraordinary, which still only takes it back 3,000 years.
Well, and doesn't that also, and this is tied into astrology to a point because the astrology has been the constant. The stars have been our constants. Not even our, Pangea existed before. I mean, that's proof positive
Yeah,
that like we weren't all in one place. But do you think that maybe part of the reason why they don't acknowledge it and why they don't give a full disclosure is that it would become a cautionary tale about how this could go wrong? I mean, we're already
maybe.
watching the equivalencies between the United States and the fall of the Roman Empire. Like
Mm.
it's to say like why are we covering up things that should be knowledge and things that could be fact?
And that's the whole thing, isn't there? There is a collective world narrative that says this is the story of man, this is the story of world history, and we have to stay to that. We have to stick
Hmm.
in that kind of. parameter instead of actually looking at the fact that there is a lot of evidence around of
Mm,
predating kind of civilizations that go back, who had immense technology and intelligence, and and it's, I think, the history we're taught at school
mm.
is so inaccurate in many ways. It's just another story. And you have to go out there and look for yourself to find the real truth, which is
Yeah.
why it's wonderful when you have programs, sorry, the documentaries like the ones that Graham Hancock has done,
Oh
where he
God,
looks
yeah.
at ancient apocalypse and just really
Graham,
talks about.
yeah, Graham Hancock has been a great resource for me. And I listen. I love his style. He's just like, listen, you have to question this. Listen, you have to
Mm,
see this. If this is where the arrow points, it's leading you to something. That's really all he's ever said. His most controversial thing is that he doesn't give you the answers of what you think. He leads you to places so you can think about them.
mm,
And I think it was Graham Hancock that I actually learned about this, and I did a little bit of a deeper dive. There's a reason why we have secured in Antarctica all of the seeds of the world. Like that gives me super duper pause because that means are we smart enough to say like we should probably make sure that we have all the seeds secured in a place that if an apocalypse or a freeze over or whatever it's already conditioned for temperature, right? It's already built for long term.
mm, mm,
Why not put all of the seeds of the world? And it's everything. It is everything.
mm,
It's from every green bean to flax to,
mm.
grass to whatever. It's like ready to be reused and propagated if for some reason it gets wiped out. Like
Yeah.
that's like that should make you
Wow.
think.
It's like, wow. And there's an iceberg down in Antarctica that has partly broken away, and the part that has broken away is absolutely massive. And they're discovering that there are unknown before, undiscovered life forms that are living in it that
Because
are
they're
thought,
melting out of there, right?
yeah,
Like
they're
Jurassic
thought,
Park stuff.
yeah, yeah, which is extraordinary, which is
My gosh.
wonderful.
I mean, listen, people are like, Brandon, you just read dead people. Like, what value does that have in the world? And to somebody that's receiving a reading, it could be everything. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, yeah, I'm not fighting some sort of super battle. Like when things go down, it's like who actually does anything of meaning? We have to go into the survival mode, and what are the pieces of this when we have all this undiscovered things? And of course, our mind immediately goes to threats. You saw the dire wolf come back after centuries of not being here, and that kind of exploration is important to us because we have to understand what made them go extinct.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's real. The fact that we're smart enough to reverse engineer things, enough to
Mm,
recreate them,
mm,
also allows us to understand the weaknesses that we
mm,
have, not to become a better species, but we turn everything into the great equalizer, which is money, right?
mm.
Let's take a look at the US chart too.
Yeah. Hi, Dara. Good to see you here. Welcome. First time here.
Oh, Dara, how are you?
And then we'll look
Um,
at Trump and the full moon.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way,
So,
when you sent me the Elon Musk one, I started laughing because I'm like, Elon Musk was so yesterday. You do realize that the Trump administration is just he's gonna go to work one day, and his keypad's not gonna work. He's gonna be like, listen, Donnie, my keypad doesn't work anymore. Yeah, well, I'm not the president, remember? Like it'll be some sort of like catty bullshit like that, and he'll be like, but but
love
but
it.
one more quick look at this.
Yeah.
You have this transition of this Uranus return
Yes.
that we're really that's going to be the real detonation point of things.
Which
And
is a year
Uranus is
away,
moving at
really.
it. I think it has one more retrograde while in Taurus. So that's
Yes.
the retrogrades really slow down.
It doesn't go back because it's been on my sun, and it doesn't go back to 24. It only goes back to about, I think, 26 or 27. So um,
Right.
when it comes to Uranus in the US chart, it's going to be in about, a year to 18 months' time, isn't it? So, and
Yeah,
it's
so
interesting. Yeah, go on, because I was just thinking that it's it's going to work. It's how we serve. It's how America serves its public, how it serves its veterans, how it serves the people, the people that have nothing. And Uranus in Gemini is about thinking outside the box and being innovative,
Yeah.
but will they?
Yeah. And it's, you hit it head on with the idea that we're in this vulnerability trap of these changes and this suddenness, and that's the volatility of the world is directly related to Uranus right now. Directly related. Uranus in the US chart is sneakily placed on his decan. It's sneakily placed just far enough away from the sun. It is just outside of being conjunct to anything like Mars. But it
Mm,
had, Mars had to do its transit past Uranus to,
mm,
rebel, to have enough of those things to prove
yeah,
identity.
yeah.
And then to have the timings of declarations of independence and so forth and so on.
Mm,
We're really truly in a time where we are, when you look at the uniqueness of the US natal chart, you realize how beautifully genius it is and set up for success. And we've taken that success and gloated about it or gotten over our skis. But the equalizer is going to be the transits, right? It's
mm.
going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing as Uranus moves past this. And then it's going to get into, our liberation of self will be when Uranus moves.
You've frozen. You've frozen.
But it's so going to be
Oh,
good
you're
for
back.
us,
You
right?
froze. You froze
Of
for
course,
me.
of course I did. I said the most intelligent thing I've ever said in my entire life. What I was saying is that Uranus is kind of this quick and sudden change, and as we go over this Uranus return and we decide what stability should look like, then we
Mm,
have to deal with Uranus over Mars in our relationship house. So we're going to
mm,
have a lot of fronts here. We've got about 5, 6, 7 years of this where we're going
mm.
to have to deal with certain tumulsions and certain things, and maybe it's a correction. Those of you that might support some of the ideals of the presidency right now, you might kind of say like, well, we kind of had to do this. There's a little piece of that for me. I don't like how it's happening.
I mean, I think if it works, fantastic. But at the moment, the trouble is you've got to have everyone working with it sensibly. And I don't think it's been thought through. Well, I don't think anything gets thought through,
Yeah.
potentially because of the way things go. Um, but I just want to come on to Neptune because Neptune is going to be going across that IC. It's hovering on the IC of the fourth house, which is the homeland. And I'm wondering if you're going to see in America some storms, big storms, bad storms, or flooding, or something of that nature.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, that's another one of those organically strong transits that take a long time and really define you. And by the
Mm.
way, does that mean we're going to have earthquakes and storms of the natural sense? Sure. Why
Yeah.
not? Didn't
And
get
by the
formed
way,
overnight.
yeah, this is a supermoon in that it's very close to the Earth. Even though it's a new moon, it's a supermoon. So it will be exerting a gravitational pull on the tectonic plates. So we may see another bit of, Earth rumbling. And
Yeah.
but Uranus actually at the moment is quite interestingly placed because it's sextiling both Saturn and Mars. And Mars in turn is trining Venus and Saturn. And Saturn really in such a close conjunction with Venus
Yeah.
is kind of putting some sense and sensibility into things, trying to say, cool it, slow down, because it's in the communications sector. It's like nothing is clear because it's Pisces. You've got the North Node there, which is about the direction. This is where the people are going. This is how, how are we going to take care of our locality? And Venus, which of course actually goes direct a little bit later on the same day as the full moon. And the full moon actually in the United States is going to be on the 12th because this has been set up for London, this full moon chart. So it
Sure. Makes
actually goes,
sense.
it goes, it
All right.
goes,
We
and
listen,
Venus goes
this
direct.
the
Yeah,
spirit of it all is right there.
yeah,
The
exactly. The
spirit
big
of it all is
thing of the
right
agenda.
there.
Yeah. Let's look at Trump with the full
Yeah,
moon.
The Trump idea here, and of course we always pay close attention to this. Some of us have it in our back pocket and show up on the regular. I think people have to realize that like Trump's transitions are so extreme. They are so extreme. It could mean, the fact that Uranus is sitting in his 10th house and he is a couple of years away from his own Uranus return, which, by
Yeah,
the way, he turns 79 a little later on this year on Flag
yeah.
Day, so why not have a parade? I mean, the guy will look for anything to do that, and it's in his chart because
Mm,
his sun is in the 10th house, and North Node is there, and it's
mm,
conjunct to Uranus. He's going to do unusual stuff on the regular. That's
mm,
his natal chart. You have
mm,
Jupiter transiting through, that's going to empower him in ways that you didn't see coming. Then
mm,
you have Uranus kind of sitting on that 9th to 10th house line, which is kind of that overemphasis of his extremism, really, to this. And
mm,
listen, I've said this 100 times. He could have been the greatest leader on the face of the planet with this placement.
mm,
He could have been like, we're bringing you into the age of Aquarius. And maybe he is in his own dipshittery way.
mm,
But seeing how he's going to be affected here, I mean, what's your immediate take on this? Like, what you
mm.
see in terms of
Well,
his Chiron being acted upon and everything
I,
else?
I think really I'm probably thinking a little bit beyond the full moon. I think the full moon is because it's in his third house of communications. So it's how he's affecting people locally. And I think it'll see him. Well, I think it's seeing what he's already doing, which is just kind of uh, being a little bit more circumspect, if that's at all possible, and just
Mm,
taking a step slightly sideways. I wouldn't say backwards, but just sidestepping some of the stuff that's going on. Now, this full moon is widely conjunct his natal Jupiter. So you see, it may be that it's actually also affecting him in the pocket. I mean, this
right.
man is basically bankrupt, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, and listen, nothing to be said about this, Mars opposition to Pluto. It's hitting
yeah,
his sixth and
I'd be
will
more
hit
worried
his
if
12th
I was
house.
him. If I was him, I'd be really worried about that Mars Pluto opposition
Oh,
when that on
that
the
it's
20th.
the worst. And listen, I can say this because my Leo rising is at
In the
26
degree, isn't it?
degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a few degrees short of that. I mean, it's
Mm,
going to hit me in a way too. But, I've also cleaned up a lot of my stuff. I also have the blessing of having Jupiter in my sixth house, which kind of makes me immortal. Am I right? Isn't
of
that what that
course,
is?
darling, of course.
It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, don't step on my cape. Come on, I got shit to do. Um, but it's for him, someone that is just taking a swing at everybody, and to have the transit Pluto moving into opposition his Pluto with
Mm,
Mars, fucking
mm,
don't eat the cheeseburger, buddy. You better
no.
not clog the highways because they ain't getting ready.
Yeah.
It is his
Mm,
saving grace in this is
mm,
that the nodes are in Pisces and Virgo, and it's weird because it's funny. It indicates that money or medical would keep him alive. Other people would bring him back. So
mm,
if he were to have an event, we're not wishing
mm.
anything on
No, no,
anybody, okay?
absolutely not.
But if it were to happen, those placements actually kind of are a saving grace in that. But
Mm,
it ain't good. Like there's about 5 placements that astrologers go, oh,
oh,
oh, this is one of them. This is one
yeah,
of the ones.
yeah.
And
I'd stay home all day if it was me.
what's that,
And
hon?
I'd stay home all day that day and have people waiting on me because I'd be too worried that even if I get up and go and make a cup of tea, I'll fall over and hit my head. And
Oh God, that would be awful. I don't know what I'd
still
do
going to
without
happen to
you.
me. Don't worry.
I don't know what I would do without you with that. My
Oh,
gosh. We would still
honey.
do a show. You would just have a TBI and it would just be mostly me talking. So basically nothing would change. I'm
Yeah, just
only
same old,
I'm
same
only
old.
kidding. And by
Uh,
the way, yeah, so what else about Trump's chart and then we'll wrap up.
yeah, well, let's have a look. Uh,
Lenny,
is
good call on that. He loves to celebrate himself. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
That is that sun in the 10th house.
yeah. And it's all the Pisces energy still in his eighth house, and that's going to continue. And he's got Neptune there, and that's going to continue for several years.
Doesn't
He
that
is,
also make him a giant criminal? Couldn't that make him a giant criminal, all that energy in the 8th
I
house in
guess so.
Pisces?
It's like protectionism, isn't it?
Well, it's being creative on how to steal other people's money. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, is that a tariff or is that my way of dropping the market so I can buy more shares?
yeah, yeah.
It's
That's
insane.
usually it. Yeah. And Venus, of course, is going direct. So he's going to want his money pot to fill up, isn't he? Because he doesn't want to take the risk that his own finances might actually falter a bit with his big decisions. But
Yeah, I think he's mad. Like I could see him be mad about a particular placement like Venus in Pisces going direct because
mhm,
like, hey, don't you know who I am? Don't you know? Like, he almost had to devalue himself. Like, he's the perfect clown. He
mm,
doesn't mind devaluing things or creating chaos so that then he can
mm,
look like the hero afterwards.
mm, mm,
And listen, we're already tired of it. We were tired of it. We're not even 100 days into the administration yet, and
mm,
he's already done so much shenanigans. Do you
mm,
realize that this presidency, an average thing within one of the ways that checks and balances happen, positively in the United States is that we challenge things in court. Like that is actually a very important function of what we do.
mm,
So if a president wants to say, okay, what is the validity of this? They will bring a motion or an act or a law or a lawsuit into into a court of appeals in order to kind of understand the validity of it because it has to go through that in order to get to the Supreme
mm,
Court to ultimately rule on it, say yay or nay or whatever. The average, and I don't quote me on this one, but I got to get the spirit of it. In previous administrations, not the Trump one withstanding,
mm,
there was about 200 in the first year of an administration because they were testing things, and a lot of things were small and minute, like whether or not we could give money to certain things because of this law and that sort of thing. So things get tested out. Sometimes 90% of it, 98% of it never hit the public. So
mm,
200. There have been
mm.
over 2,500 lawsuits brought by the Trump administration since they got back into office. 2,500. So over 100 times more because what they want to do is flood the courts, flood the decision making, find any way possible to stick their finger into the back end of it so they can rip it all open. So they are
Mm,
attempting 2,500 times. So things are getting tested right now in a big way,
mm,
in a
mm.
huge way, right?
But tell me, Brandon, what do you think, or what's America's view of Musk? And is he going to stick around much longer, or is he already planning his escape to Mars or wherever?
I
You know,
think
let's
that,
waste lots of money on getting to Mars, as somebody said, instead of actually feeding the poor and homing them.
yeah, I think history is going to really not be kind to Elon Musk in a lot of ways because he's everything he's doing is unsustainable. Whether it's buying a company for 400 million and driving the cost down to 40 million or whatever, like he's not a good business person. He's an opportunist. That's really all he is, which you need to be a little bit of an opportunist, but you still have to know what you're doing when you get there. I firmly believe that Donald Trump is, as with everybody else in his cabinet, setting them up for failure because it's a matter of, he's the Colombian, drug lord that has a bunch of patsies that he has no problem using as human shields as shit goes down.
Mm,
I want to point out something that a lot of people have missed, and there
mm,
is a historical thing, and I always look at. I, I I don't know if this is just where my path is or it just comes naturally to me, But healing ancestral wounds is a really, really, really big thing for me. It just is.
Okay. Hmm.
Donald Trump's uncle worked for the FBI. Donald Trump's uncle was the one that cleaned out Nikola Tesla's apartment when he died. Yeah.
Ooh.
There is something here bigger going on, whether it be kept secrets, whether it be family lineage, whether it be ancestral wounds. So it's understanding that like there's something else going on here that like as a spiritual seeker, as a truth seeker, I'm gonna respect to a certain degree, right?
Mm.
One of the things that, and by the way, the Mars thing just is not sustainable. You cannot terraform Mars. Like you just can't. Like the amount of energy and
Build a golf
we
course.
a lot of things are still going to have to go wrong
Mm.
before we have to go to Mars, right?
Mm.
You know, I'm sorry, but the final countdown, we're leaving together. It's a fun song. It's certainly not going to happen in our lifetimes, and I think our kids, grandkids, are still
No,
not even going to have it on their radar.
no.
But understanding that the idea that there is family lineage here, there was links to this, there is
Mm.
money tied way back when between the government and everything else, that maybe this is kind of a right size. I mean, Donald Trump will be, at best, his hope is going to be an anti hero. Elon
Mm.
Musk is someday a kid, 25 years from now is going to say, why didn't we honor a great man like Elon Musk? He did all of these things. And he's going to believe the bullshit memes that are out there about him going and visiting kids in hospitals and him standing in the middle of a rainstorm to test his Starlink and everything else. Everything he does that even might be remotely, look kind is because of his product development. He doesn't give a rat's ass about humanity or about the human. He cares
Mm.
about humanity because he thinks he can make money on it. But
Yes.
ultimately, I think Elon Musk is going to fall flat on his face because it won't be sustainable. He'll be the boy that cries wolf over and over again. And think about this. For 20 years, the Republican Party railed, absolutely railed against electronic cars, against electric cars. Now they are absolutely praising and baiting a an electric car manufacturer owner as their champion. There is no moral compass here. There is no ethical standard. And Elon Musk will become an enemy because people will say we want to go back to the things that we know. And oh, by the way, climate change is a farce and all this other stuff. My point of view before all this started with Elon Musk is that he was a hell of an innovator, but he needed to learn how to turn it over. He's got to turn this over because what he's doing, he's not doing well.
No,
And
no.
but it's everything Trump wanted him to do. So I think it's disgrace. I think he's gonna be the fall guy. Um, Cash Patel will be the fall guy.
Hmm.
Um, uh, just all of them. They're just all gonna fall one by one,
Hmm.
and you'll see it. You'll see it. And
Mm.
then he can't find anybody worth their salt except for loyalty. Like,
Mm.
we're in a bad spot here, Penny. Come
I
rescue
know,
us.
but the thing is, do you think in any way, because obviously the current um, party, the Republican Party, have been voted in for 4 years, and that's just mandatory, isn't it? They have to, they can't call an early election like we can in the United
Mm.
Kingdom, where if something's not going well, we can have a vote of no confidence. So
Hmm.
call an election. So if, say, something, if Trump was not able to continue in office for whatever reason, because I
Yeah.
still go back to the conversation we had about this 2 years ago when I said he's got to watch his health. And I think with that, as I said, Pluto opposite Mars and Pluto in his sixth house opposite Mars, there is a potential for heart attack and stroke. I just had that feeling a long, long time ago, and I still stick by it. So, supposing he's not around or just, unwell so that he cannot actually perform his duties, does Vance automatically become the next leader?
There's a plan somewhere. We haven't even mentioned Project 2025 and that kind of,
No.
social
Mm,
engineering stuff that's going on and the things that we'll need to
mm.
kind of, the things that are breaking right now are going to take a long time to fix.
Yeah.
And I think that this is no longer really about Democrats and Republicans. It's really not. I
Right.
mean, the Democrats did a very
It's
poor
about the
job at
kind of
leadership.
the big boys at the very top that we don't even know
Yeah.
who they are, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
What
yeah, you can
time,
say it that way, but it's
whatever.
no longer about like Democrats and Republicans. It is genuinely about, freedom versus this autocracy thing that's coming in. This is
Mm,
really about, it's a class thing. It's not a party
mm,
thing. And I
mm,
think we have to keep that in mind. And it's not all about what it is. Like, we don't know what good leadership is. We haven't had it in a long
mm.
time. And
No.
even when you think you had good leadership, you come to find out, that Obama did these backroom deals that actually helped the bankers in such a way that allowed them to go bankrupt and walk away scot-free. Like, that's not, and we're pissed off that Trump didn't get whatever. Trump saw that and was like, if you're going to let the banks get away with $4 billion, you're not going
Mm,
to hold me accountable for the couple $1,000s I might owe the state of
mm,
New York, which he still does.
mm,
He has
mm,
every single one of his lawsuits is unsettled. All of
mm.
his judgments are unsettled. They could come to the White House and arrest him today if he wasn't the top law official in the world, which is just insane,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's the problem. The problem of the masses isn't they want you to focus in on Democrats and Republicans. Cut it out.
Right.
Unregister today because everybody should become an independent.
Mm,
Everybody should become an independent because that's not what this is about. You
mm,
can have conservative ideas, you can have liberal ideas, and both can be true. And we
mm,
have to learn that, Penny. We have to. Europe
mm,
actually does it pretty well. You guys
mm.
don't mix your politics with dinner, do you?
No. No.
Which is why
No.
we have to wrap up because you got yourself a little dinner date tonight, don't you?
Mm.
You do. I can tell. I'm reading you. How did you meet them?
Not telling you.
What's that?
I'm not telling you.
I nailed it, didn't I?
No.
A little bit.
Mm.
Little bit. I'm not jealous. I understand. Listen, I love doing these. You guys
Yeah.
love seeing them. Penny and I
Yeah.
love to be
We
together.
haven't done a lot of astrology today. We've done a lot of politics.
Well, we had a good mix, I think. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give that on a scale of 1 to 100 because let's be honest. We're worth the full
Mm.
100. I'd give this an 88. I think we did pretty well.
Okay. Okay. Let us know in
Oh,
the
you don't
chat.
think so? Are you gonna grade like an East German
No,
judge? Like, what are you doing?
I'm self-critical. I'm very self-critical. And because it's the end of the day for me, and I had a really super busy day, it's been just one thing after another, full on, full on, full on. My brain isn't kind of sparking on all cylinders. It's
Hmm.
grinding down and probably needs food, I think,
Oh, so
nourishment.
it's a low blood sugar.
Probably, yes, probably.
Well,
And
on the West Coast, this is the start of their day.
I
In
know.
on the East Coast, this is leading into lunchtime, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the rest of the world, it's going to land
A lot
on
of
its
people have
inbox
gone
because
bye
they're
bye. A lot of
yeah.
people have gone
Some of you
bye
are going night night, and it's all
bye.
good. It's all good. All right, hon. Listen, till we meet
Good.
again. Hard taps to you.
Yeah.
Hard.
Well, I think we should do something around the new moon because that'll be at the same time, the new moon in Taurus, because it'll be the same time as the Mars Pluto opposition.
We can do this again in a
About
couple of weeks.
2 weeks' time, yeah.
We can do
Unless you're
this
on
in a
the
couple of
roll.
weeks. Well, yeah, I'm actually going to be in a little state called Texas.
Ah.
Yeah, well, they banned my book. They get my visit.
Mhm.
I'm even gonna
What's
not
her
to kind of
name?
schedule this out.
What's her name?
What her name is
What's her
Austin.
name?
Um, in but I'm gonna be down there. I'm gonna be doing a live on the 26th. Maybe we can talk about right before I go or while I'm down there. That
Mm,
could be fun. And then we have a birthday special to plan for you. There's so many things coming,
I know. I'm
right?
going to be I'm going to be a year older.
Well, that's how it works. And by the way, I don't want to disappoint you all at once, but I'm going to tell you guys, listen, none of us are going to make it. We all have our time.
Us alive,
Right.
are we?
Yeah. Right. And then, oh my gosh, you're going to be 70? No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've been
70.
using the wrong chart this whole time. It's so funny. In my infinite wisdom and charm, I was reading somebody the other day, and and I kind of did the tongue in cheek thing, and I'm like, oh, there is no way you are this age.
Yeah.
And then
And
I
she's
said, oh my
no, I'm
gosh,
not.
I would have thought you were 30. And she leaned right into the Zoom call and goes, you mean you've been reading my chart wrong the whole time, thinking I got her birthday wrong? I'm laughing, and I'm like, oh, Penny's going to like that one. That was funny. That was fun. And it was.
Yeah, go on. Let's just answer, Simi. What about the prediction on the Canadian election? What are you thinking? I'm talking.
I actually like that I like that there's just enough. Canada just feels right to me. Like I know I sound kind of cheeky about that, but it just feels right to me.
For now.
Because it's like, I like to hear that not everybody's in agreement with them. I like to hear that there's strongholds like Alberta basically going, yeah, no, not that at all. We're not doing that one, right? We're not whatever. It's more of the feel of like, this is what the resistance looks like. The resistance doesn't all have to be on the same team. It's like we can't let the infighting happen, and it is a class warfare. This is class warfare. This is not political warfare. This is class warfare. Those tariffs was an action on class. The the ICE detainments and deportation is a class thing. It is absolutely Huxley, Asimov, Bradbury all rolled into one. Like, it is all of this kind of futuristic worst case scenarios playing out on one another. And I think Canada at least kind of might be a little behind in the times with that, but that's also the conservative nature of what Carney, I think, is bringing to the table. And again, you don't have to, I like to be able to say, like, people need more rights. People need to be left alone, that sort of thing. But I don't know. We'll get there. All right, love. Good show. By the way, we just moved it up to a 9.0. Heart taps. Heart taps to everybody out there. Thanks so much for doing this. So we'll do this in a couple more weeks, okay, love?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, everybody. Keep going.
Okay. Take care, everyone.